This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 334. We are your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my original Coffee with Kenobi logo from 2013. It's got the white cup with the Jedi symbol on it that Corey originally did. A great flashback, a throwback really to the beginnings. This is sort of a throwback in a sense because we are looking at Star Wars: The Clone Wars. However, these are the new seasons, and as listeners of the show have gleaned over the past month and a half, when we review Star Wars: The Clone Wars Season 7, you've got to bring on the one and only Mr. Tom Gross.
Oh, well, thank you. It's always great to be here to talk about the Clone Wars and episode 334, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, man, that is, well, in a coffee mug from 2013. Yeah. I was just, what I was thinking, what struck me was 334. What an obscure number. It's a big number, but 334. Interesting. Well, I'm glad to be on show number 334 and to talk about Deal, No Deal.
That's right. Deal, No Deal is the episode we're going to discuss. It is the 6th episode in season 7. So I'm going to remember what I usually do or forget to do lately. Let's give an overall kind of opinion of this and a letter grade. Why don't you go first?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So okay. Let's see.
We're going to be a lot different on this one, aren't we?
I'm afraid that I might get some booze through the webs, but I'm going to my initial, because my grade changed on a second viewing, but I want to go with initial because that will help me work through some of this. C+ is where I was when I watched this for the first time, and my overall impression was that this it didn't go the direction I thought it would. Now, note, I'm not saying the way I wanted it to go. I'm not trying to write the show for Dave Filoni or anything like that. It wasn't where I was anticipating it to go. I thought that Ahsoka was going to leave and have a new sort of soul-searching adventure, but she stays with the sisters. And I like the sisters, but I don't love them. And so, or in my initial response was, I like the sisters, but I don't love them. I kind of thought that Ahsoka had gotten everything she needed for her place where she is. And so when they go on this little adventure, it just, again, I thought there were a lot of really cool bits and pieces of the episode on my first viewing, but it didn't come together for me. So C+ is where I am.
No, I think that's great, and I appreciate your honesty. I mean, again, critical thinking, intellectual honesty, that is how you can trust a critic. So I appreciate your honesty with that. I'm going to give it an A.
Wow.
Yeah, I rarely give A's on these things, but I think there's some really smart character stuff. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the sisters either, and I'm not even going to say they're growing on me, but I appreciate what they are doing and how they're actually helping us to laser focus on Ahsoka and who she is as a character in a way that I did not expect. I think there's some cool stuff with Kessel. And then there is one moment in this episode which I think is really, really lovely that we're going to talk about. So as you mentioned, we're still with Trace and Rafa. Notice I didn't have you pronounce Rafa yet because I know you might start singing a kid's song.
Baby Beluga, yes. It's been in my mind since last week.
Not Rafa. I still, when I was editing that show, I really got a nice chuckle out of that. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So we find out that Rafa has set up something with the Pikes, and right they talk about that right initially, and Ahsoka is very, very skeptical, but she's in this really interesting precarious spot where she wants to help, she wants to guide. But she also doesn't want to appear as worldly or intergalactically as she actually is, because she's trying to sort of be more covert about her history for acceptance and for a lot of other reasons, I think, which are still to be determined. But talk about kind of the conversation from the beginning.
So the scene opens, or the show episode opens, with Ahsoka and Trace on top of the ship that Trace has been building, which now we know as the Silver Angel. And I enjoyed this part when she reveals the name of it, because Ahsoka kind of like, the what? I've never heard of anything like that. But hey, it's your ship. You can call it what you want. And then later on in the episode, when Rafa discovers what it's called, she goes, "You might want to reconsider that." And it kind of gives Ahsoka and Rafa a little hint of a connection that we'll build later on in the episode. But anyway, so they're on top of the ship and just chatting. And a couple things, we learn a little bit more about Trace and Rafa's background in regards to parents, and that there was some sort of an unfortunate split. So we're left kind of wondering and feeling like something really bad must have happened, which living on 1313 seems to be the standard. And then we learn a little bit more about Trace's aspirations and what this ship means to her, and that she has built this ship like just completely on her back, from odd jobs here, odd jobs there, doing this, doing that, a little help from Rafa. She has built this ship piece by piece to what it is now. And Ahsoka says, "Impressive." And Trace says, no, impressive. No, I'm sorry. I didn't put the comma in my notes. No, impressive is coming up. And so it was like, okay, this, like, she's about ready to experience a dream here. And so it was a nice moment, a nice way to open up the episode.
I like that a lot, because there is, I hadn't thought about the fact that Rafa and Ahsoka share kind of a mutual understanding, albeit over a trivial matter.
Yeah.
But there's nothing, which is really cool, but there's nothing trivial about what Rafa has gotten them into, which is they're going to be dealing with gangsters, with dangerous people, and they have to go to Kessel, which is really, really cool. But before we get to that, we've got the sequence where the Silver Angel leaves 1313, leaves the platform and goes up to the surface. And then there's this wonderful moment, which is one of my favorites in this season so far, where Ahsoka says, "You can't. This is the military lane. You can't be in this lane. You gotta get out of this." And then this powerful sequence where Anakin is on the bridge, and he's basically, it's very similar to the Return of the Jedi. Where is that shuttle going? Shuttle Tiberium. What is your cargo and destination? Yes. Right. It was very, very similar to that. With what is the name of that? Of the Republic officer in charge. He's one that Tom Kane's the voice of. I knew it until I asked what it was.
It's not Yularen, is it?
Yeah, it's Yularen. Yes, that's
okay.
Exactly
Okay.
Yeah. And he says, should I stop him? And then so Anakin and Ahsoka, they sense one another. I thought that was such a lovely, lovely testament to their connection. Call back to Return of the Jedi and a little bit of The Empire Strikes Back. And it made me very, very happy. I really thought it was rich. Because really it's the first time they connect since she leaves the Jedi Order.
Yes, that was a touching moment. And that was one of the highlights of this episode for me, was when that happens. And I had the same feelings that you did, the throw-aheads to the way Vader senses so many different people. I mean, on the Death Star in A New Hope, he senses, I sense something I haven't felt since. There's that moment. And then there's the moment that you described. And then there's the moment where, they're flying, and it's in Empire Strikes Back isn't it Empire Strikes Back where Luke is laying in the thing and he says, "Father," and Vader is on the Star Destroyer. And so there's so many times that we see that, but here we see it pre-Vader with Anakin and Ahsoka. And it was a touching moment. And some people in CWK Cafe, talked about how that like brought them to tears. Or, just brought those emotions out. And I totally agree. That was such a wonderful moment. I wanted to, if you don't mind, I'm going to step a moment before that, where the Silver Angel is rising up out of Coruscant. and the music gives a sense of like maiden voyage. This is like their moment and all of this, but I couldn't help, and this is not a negative to the show. I don't want it's a positive to the show for the conflict that it created in me. And everything felt like this was such a great moment. This is Trace's breakaway to freedom and all of this and everything. And it was beautiful. The artistic sense of Coruscant and the ship coming out of the middle and flying right at you. It was beautiful. But all I could feel was the dread inside of me because we're going on one of Rafa's schemes. And I just had a feeling. I didn't have any idea it'd be Kessel, but I knew it involved gangsters or something illegal or something that was going to get them in trouble and make this maiden voyage go directly into peril. And so I didn't have that, like, I was so conflicted because I was like, oh, this is so cool and it's beautiful and maiden voyage but it didn't feel good because I knew where they were going.
No, I agree. Yeah, I will say I was a little thrown. I mean, she spent how much time and how much money and how many resources to build a ship that has a hyperdrive that functions, and she's able to put it into light speed, which I feel like that would be a lot more challenging. But I mean, I haven't seen all the trial runs, so I don't know. But it kind of broke the verisimilitude briefly. But I will say the fact that she kept the air brakes on, which who knew that was even a thing.
Yeah, right.
I thought that was kind of cool and it's sort of a little bit more real world, I guess. But I thought it was an interesting artistic choice. I'm starting to see why you grade it the way that you did, but I do think there's some poignant moments that serves a really strong narrative punch as we progress. You want to comment on that before we move on to the next part?
The air brakes?
Yeah. Or just any of it. I mean, the hyperspace, the fact that suddenly, wow. Because I felt like she did it. So the problem with this one is that I watched this one the same week that I watched Solo again. And that great moment when Han walks onto the bridge or into the cockpit of the Falcon for the first time and they go to hyperspace. And it's this complete sense of wonder and awe that he has. He just falls in love with the Falcon in that moment. And I guess I was kind of hoping for that with Trace, but she just kind of seemed, well, honestly, she kind of just felt like a kid over her head, which I guess is a little bit more appropriate now that I think about it.
Yeah, what a cool juxtaposition and like happenstance that you watched those two things at the same time. You know, Solo's maiden voyage of the Falcon, or with him in the Falcon in the cockpit, and then here Trace in a similar type of situation, and the same planet is going to be involved in both stories. Interesting. It did cross my mind that did she calculate hyperspace travel? But you know, I think the whole air brakes, and there is another instance, you know, when she gets into the wrong lane and things like that, just demonstrating sort of her novice excitement of flying. And so I could appreciate that. And, you know, and that does come back later on at the end when they try to escape at the very, very end, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about. So yeah, I think the space travel, while simplified, I think it worked for the episode, at this point.
Yeah. Oh, I think so too. And like I said, now it makes more sense when I think about it, because of course, this will be a very big moment they are very much in over their heads. And if not for Ahsoka, they probably wouldn't be alive by the end of the episode, quite honestly.
I would agree.
So they make it to Kessel, again, speaking of Solo, because that's where we actually see Kessel for the first time on screen, as far as like the big screen movies. But we see two parts of Kessel. The first part of Kessel we see is lush, is beautiful. It's got this amazing palace, but you just kind of get this sense that there's some wrongdoing, or there's just sort of something isn't right about this place. So we meet the custodian of this incredible palace and the servants, and there's a lot of unease there. A lot of moments where Trace is basically trying to assert herself, again, like a kid, showing, "Hey, look at me. This is what I can do. Let's put this on the fridge, Mom and Dad, that I did this great accomplishment. I flew this ship," and things like that. But it also underlines this tension where you, like, the treatment of the slave more like the slave starts to drop the serving tray, and you get the sense that the things are more than what they seem on the surface.
Yeah, and I like the assessment of Trace's sort of demeanor in this location, and I felt like, so there you had the naive excitement, and then you had Rafa kind of playing it cool, but also, and I won't say a naive way, but she's playing it cool in sort of a novice way, and then you have Ahsoka, who this is standard fare for her. So we can kind of see where all the players sit here. And when Ahsoka says that and the guy drops the tray, boy, you felt that, you realized, oh, there's tension here, but the custodian just handles it very well and says, I'm not aware of things like that. Our stuff is, and has the line ready. And so we learn that they're there to pick up unrefined spice, which we know from the rest of the Star Wars mythology that's generally not acceptable in legal terms, and so they're in deep here. And yeah, sure, there's a lot of money at stake here, and Rafa, I can see why she's excited about this. This is a big deal, and he's talking contracts and everything else, but this is they're playing out of their league of 1313 at this point.
Absolutely, and this is a metaphor for the danger of drugs and the problem with drugs, and they said, no, this is going to make some powerful medicines. Could spice in the Star Wars universe be used for medicines? Maybe. I don't know that for sure. Mm-hmm. But obviously Ahsoka has got a bad feeling about this, so to speak.
Indeed.
So then they have to leave the atmosphere and come back. And this brought a lot of interesting conversation with Mason, where he's like, why don't they just go in a straight line? I said, I don't know, maybe like kind of slingshotting up into the atmosphere and coming down below is more effective. I'm not sure about that. I thought that was an interesting question. Yeah. And at first I had to kind of think about, is this even the same planet? But it is. It's very much, there's a lot of duality in this episode and the previous one between Trace and Rafa, between different sides of Kessel. But in the case of Kessel, it's still the same place. One is just a little more obvious about what it's trying to do, and one is trying to put up an air of sophistication, but underneath is darkness. And it's a little too early to say that metaphor matches perfectly with Rafa and Trace, but it very well might be that as we move along too.
Yeah, I really like that we had two different biomes in this planet, because Star Wars, and I'm sitting here trying to think, Star Wars is very like, one planet has one type of climate. Hoth
Yes.
is only a snow planet, and Endor is only a forest planet, and and Tatooine is only a desert planet. So here we get to see that planets are a little bit more diverse, and it's used in such an it's used to kind of give the feel and the impression, the lush forest and the king, and this is where the money comes from. And then where does the money come from? Oh, look at all the droids down there, and look at this gray, dark area. Oh, hey, those aren't droids, by the way. Those are people. Oh, well, probably just locals. No, Ahsoka says they're slaves. And so a little eye-opener. And is it Trace, I think, that says, well, the Republic wouldn't allow that.
Yeah, it is.
And I loved Ahsoka's look here. The animation on her expression after that was you kind of felt her betrayal of the Republic and the Jedi Order, and just order in general. That, yeah, why would have I fought for such things as slavery? And it was just a quick moment that I caught only in the second viewing, that I felt a little bit of betrayal in that statement in Ahsoka's eyes. So it's an eye opener for these two, for people who've grown up on the level 1313 of Coruscant. They still have things that they can learn.
Yeah, no, that's very, very well said, and I thought that was a key thing as well. Again, Ahsoka's starting to kind of sort of the veneer of what it means to be a Jedi in the Republic, and starting to see some real doubt, which again is magnified because of what she went through when she leaves at the end of season 5. So they pick up the spice from some very shady characters. Ahsoka has a terrible feeling about it, but she still doesn't really stop it. I mean, why doesn't she stop it? Would it have done more harm than good? It probably would have. I don't know. It's just a bad situation all around. And again, I think Star Wars is at its most powerful, at least to me, when there's metaphor there about, for this example, it's how the choices we make, whatever the reason for them, it affects not only us but the people we care about as well.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm taking a note here because one thing, and this is kind of aside to where we are in the story here, but one thing that I've been thinking about a lot as we've been talking here today and last week, these two episodes are about Ahsoka Tano. And as I mentioned at the opening here, as well as last week, these were not the stories I was expecting. And even in the first story arc, where it was more character driven than it was necessarily driving the story of the Clone Wars. And so the note I was just writing down is the question I'm asking myself now is, as we're talking, is what do I learn about Ahsoka in these episodes? And so I'll share that at the end. But so sorry about the pause, there. So something that happens here that I wanted to mention has to do with Rafa, because at this moment she pulls as they load the spice and they're getting back on the ship to make the delivery. She pulls Trace aside and she says to Trace, "I'm not sure I like her." And Trace said, "You never like any of my friends." And Rafa says, "She's not family," which demonstrates for me the bond that they have. And even though Rafa is reckless in her ways, she fights to do what she can to keep what she knows close, and that's her sister Trace. And yeah. And you put that side by side with the conversation, because at the beginning of this journey, before Ahsoka's allowed to walk onto the Silver Angel, Rafa confronts her there, and she stands up on the ramp looking down at Ahsoka. And Ahsoka's not bothered by that. She just looks right up. And Rafa basically says, she says literally, "What is your angle? What's your angle here?" And Ahsoka, "I have no angle." And I don't know. I just think that's interesting that Rafa confronts both of them at two different times. Not confronts, but faces Solo.
Oh, she does.
Both of them, and wants to know who this Ahsoka is, because she's I believe she does that because she's protecting her sister. And then later she says, "I don't know about this, but she's not family." I think that's really, really important to the episode.
I do too, because otherwise you could just flat out dismiss Rafa as a villain, the villain of the piece. But instead, it's much more complicated than that. There's so much more gray with this character, and the fact that she isn't more obstinate about having Ahsoka not be a part of it shows that she knows maybe deep down in her heart that this is a person who's good for her sister Trace. Also very important too. So I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk much more about this episode. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
As everyone knows, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel is the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi. They are wonderful and have always been so great and kind and supportive to me and my family, both for our travel and for travel for the show. Naturally, recently, travel is very, very different. In fact, it's not going on right now at all with everything going on in the world. And the good news is that with MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, they are going to help you have peace of mind. MEI and Mouse Fan Travel wants you to know that you are valued clients, but you're a part of the MEI family. They are putting their decades of experience to work to guide you through this uncertain time. They are going to be your advocates and are going to keep you informed and prepared to travel with confidence when you are ready, when you are comfortable. And they are suggesting that you postpone but don't cancel. They're still open for business. They will help you dream of your next trip. It doesn't have to be in 2020. It can be 2021 and beyond. This is why I love and trust MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, because they will take care of it and me. And they will you too. They're going to be looking up things and helping me and all of you to have peace of mind so that when you're ready, when things have settled down, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel will be the place for you to go. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out to MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, of course, or go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefan-travel. We are back, and we were just talking about Rafa and how she's very much a great character because we don't have her whole story yet. We don't know where she stands. But what we do know is that when everyone is arguing about what to do, once Ahsoka finally makes the connection of what Rafa's plan is, and everyone is very honest about this, Trace can't take it when they're fighting, and she's frustrated. She in a reactionary moment, she dumps the spice, which, Star Wars fans know. Dumping cargo, not a good idea historically in the world of Star Wars. But it causes some problem. And I actually found myself kind of clenching my fists, like in angst, saying, oh my gosh, well, that was a terrible decision. What's going to happen now? They've really put themselves in a really, really bad spot. So did you feel similar tension?
Oh, I mean, yeah. How many times have we heard this in the Star Wars saga? Solo dropping the shipment, and Jabba chasing them all over the galaxy and finally carbon freezing him. It was when she flipped those switches and they showed the outside of the ship, I said, no, this cannot be happening. And she does. But what is the reason she does it is because no one's taking my ship. It means so much to her, and why wouldn't it? Think about it. I'm proud of my Legos when I build them. She built a whole ship that actually works and goes into hyperspace and has air brakes and things I didn't even know they had. And so yeah. I totally felt the pressure of that there. And so that argument I thought was really, really interesting. And one thing that came to mind, and so I brought this up earlier, and here's where I want to address it. Yeah, I said earlier that they had that Ahsoka and Rafa have this connection between sort of questioning the logic or the emotion of the Silver Angel as a name. Well, here it's in this argument that I start seeing them connecting a little bit more, but as good guy or a good sister, bad sister. I almost saw both of them as Trace's sister in this because Rafa is really saying, hey, this was a payout. This was what we needed to get rid of our debts. This is what we needed to make a name for ourselves. This is what we needed for the next step of our venture. And Ahsoka's looking at the galactic side of it saying, look, this is illegal. Maybe we could take it someplace where they could make medicine with it. And so you had Trace was being pulled between the two of them. And what cracked was when she said, they're going to take your ship. They're going to take your life. They're going to take when Ahsoka ends up saying that because she's like, you don't know what you've gotten yourself into. When they discover you don't have this, they're going to take all these things. And Trace is like, no one's taking my ship. And she stops listening while Trace and Ahsoka continue to fight.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I saw that connection between the two of them in that argument that I thought it was an interesting moment, but it was a solid moment of the episode.
Oh, I agree. This is why this episode is an A for me, because of the character pieces and the authentic dialogue, and it feels like the tension between the three of them is powerful. No one really knows who to trust or where to go. They have an inherent affection for one another. Even Rafa does for Ahsoka to a degree because, she's not all bad. She sees how she's good for Trace. Now she believes in Trace and she's helping them. She certainly gives suggestions, and she's quite insistent, especially when she seems to be the most clear-headed. And she certainly, as I said last episode, she's the fulcrum between the two of them, which I don't think is an accident. But this is why I like this episode so much, because of what we learn about them. This is a perfect example of what a literary foil is. A foil, they have similar sort of an alignment, I guess, for a Dungeons and Dragons term, but they have very, very different ways about it, how they get across what their plan is. And I think it's really, really on display here, really, really well. So eventually they go, and it's time to were you going to say something?
I was just going to say one thing, and that was, I'm so glad you brought up the idea of the fulcrum, because a note I wrote down that I thought was really powerful and demonstrates that is when Rafa says that, this is going to pay off our debts, and Ahsoka gets in her, like literally on screen, steps between the two of them and points at her and says, "Your debt, not hers." There it is. The split between them and Ahsoka right in the middle. So I just wanted to point that out.
No, I'm very glad that you did. That's a key line. And it also shows that, well, you want to believe in Rafa, the fact that she would put her sister in harm's way and make it our debt and under the guise of family. That would be, that'd be an abusive relationship. I mean, honestly, it's toxic.
Yeah.
It's toxic. So you hope that there's a metanoia, some sort of a change of heart, but we'll see. So it's time to meet the Pikes and to make this transaction. And Ahsoka has a plan, Tom. And I didn't know what she was going to do, but I said last week that Ahsoka is one of the best Jedi that we've ever met as far as living out the actual Jedi way of things. And I think there's no finer example than the fact that she doesn't use violence. She uses a Jedi mind trick, and it's going to work, of course, until it doesn't. But I was really quite happy to see that approach and how it affects everybody who's a part of it.
Yeah, that was really nice. It was a really cool moment, and I was shocked at how well it worked. I really kind of thought there might be more doubt, or that secondhand man who was holding the suitcase might try to snap him out of it and recognize what happened, but it didn't. And what I found really interesting about this was that in the last episode, she uses the Force to success, and we have a clean story conclusion because of her use of the Force to save Trace. But here, while the Force worked and her plan ultimately should have worked, her faith in the Force, if I could so say that, her faith in the Force didn't quite complete her plan. And things went poorly, and his secondhand man actually did step up, and we're going to check this. This is highly, I think, doesn't he say it's highly irregular? And I just kept thinking, why doesn't that ramp close faster? Why doesn't that ramp close? The ramp must close faster. What is going on here? Why don't that? It's like, it's taking forever for this ramp to close. And so they eventually, and this is some of, again, I go back to Trace's novice as a pilot. She tells Ahsoka to go start up the engines, but a really savvy pilot would have gotten there quicker or left it running or something, because they're quickly and easily surrounded by the the Sentinel ships and trapped by a tractor beam. We've seen that trick before.
Yes, we have, and I can tell you what, Hera would have kept the Ghost running.
Yeah, she probably wouldn't have gotten out. In the first
season, she does it a lot. No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
It shows a lot of things. It shows their inexperience. It shows that even with the best of intentions, Ahsoka is still using deception and dishonesty, and it doesn't work out, right?
Yep.
I mean, when you're dealing with gangsters, I think all things are out the window. But she shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. I just think it's continually fascinating that Ahsoka is an observer, but she's also very much an active participant, and it makes for quite a challenging paradox, which is also in line with the Jedi paradox of being peacekeepers who are generals in a war.
Interesting.
Yes, it's really ironic. So we get a nice sort of a cliffhanger. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. But again, I want to reiterate the reason this is an A is because of those key moments like that conversation on the bridge where Ahsoka is asserting herself and Rafa reveals, it's not your debt. It's not her debt. It's yours. The moment with Anakin and Ahsoka, their connection, seeing it played out in that fashion, and besides the metaphor with Star Wars playing on nostalgia, to actually advance the story, that as a gimmick, I think is just really, really, really tremendous.
So it's pretty easy for me to see why this was one of your favorites. I can see how this is a solid A for you. I will raise my grade, most definitely, especially after this conversation, which, Dan, these conversations helped me so much to sort of process this. And I hope that's, why people enjoy listening, because we get to process this all together. And so I'm going to bump this one up to an A or a B plus, which is where all the rest of them have sat for me. And I have a feeling that once all is said and done, I'm easily going to just bring the whole season up to an A, because it is all so interconnected. So speaking of interconnected, there's one thing I wanted to mention about the conclusion of the episode. And then I wanted to tell you the things that I learned about Ahsoka, because I think that's going to be really important as we play this out and then connect her to the novel Ahsoka that goes to Fulcrum Ahsoka. And so at the very end, when they are trapped in the tractor beam, Rafa says to Ahsoka, "When I'm interrogated, I'm blaming you." Trace very wisely, interestingly enough, says, "This time there's plenty of blame to go around," which took me directly back to the very opening, the opening. What did you call it last week? A fortune cookie?
Yes.
Where the fortune cookie of this episode was mistakes are valuable lessons, often learned too late. And here all three of them are in a real pickle. I thought it was a very nice, wrapped bow at the top. Nice episode, handed off. And it took me 2 times to watch it to make all of those not all of them, but many of those realizations like that. And so that's the justification for my full grade from C plus to B plus raise, plus the conversation with you. A lot of neat things in this episode. And again, I think it's just been because it's so out of what where my mind was with where Clone Wars was going to go, that I'm struggling. It's a struggle, but I'm just, it's taken me a few times to process it and get into it, but I'm loving it. I'm loving this so far, because we're halfway point now, right?
Yep, we are. This is I hadn't thought about that, but yes, this is the halfway point. 2 more episodes, I'm assuming, of this arc, and then the one we've all been waiting for, the Siege of Mandalore.
Yeah. So what did I learn about Ahsoka? So I learned that Ahsoka still has a connection to Anakin, and a pretty strong connection. And because we saw something in their faces when Anakin makes the connection. There's something there, and so I don't know what that tells me yet, but we know that doubt in what she fought for originally. The comment about the slavery and the Republic, and the sort of paused moment that she has there, where I think she's questioning, I spent my entire childhood fighting for something that maybe I can't believe in, or maybe it went wrong. I don't know what it is that she's doubting here yet, but there's doubt in her mind. And then at the very end of the episode, it's the Force doesn't solve all the problems.
That's great. That's totally great. And I think it's, this Star Wars is full of evidence of, you can't rely on your power to be who you are, right? To define your role, your importance. Speaking of Clone Wars episodes, Mason and I also just watched the one where they went to the lair of Grievous. This is one of the fortune cookies. Just because you have that power and that ability doesn't mean you should be using it or flexing. Whenever I'm, a lot of times when I'm talking with students, I'll make a comment about, well, I wrote something on StarWars.com, and someone will go, "Mrs. Air, you're flexing." I'm like, no, I'm actually just telling you something that I did, or something that you can read about that I happen to write. And it's very interesting.
That's great. You're flexing.
Yeah, and kind of an interesting parallel there, really.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is
That's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me, and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. to join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk some Star Wars. It is a lot of fun, and you'll make some new friends, as well as catch up with longtime friends there as well. I also want to thank all of our new and longtime members of the CWK family and let you know how much I appreciate your help and support. I love being able to give back to you with CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. I want to thank our CWK family members, Dennis Keithley, Jason Hall, Angela Sauce, Chris Kavarka, Aaron Harris, Alexander Moylan, Ross Halliban, Jeff Ellis, David Nicely, Adam Bankhurst, Jessica Berry, Colby Mead, Frank Mulder, LJ Souter, Mark Suter, Nick Deco, Eric Struthers, BJ Smith, Jared Cantor, Brian McKinney, Christian Dale, Daz Davies, Thea Selby, Chris Metz, Caroline Maselli, Jim Capron, Blake Weaver, Brian Harding, Dan Ream, Kurt McKellen, Christine Turk, Simbot Defterdarian, Ian Thompson, Alex Procasio, Hannah, Tyler Pompa, Connie Shee, Susan Gray, Chelsea Sansbury, and Josh Boylan. If you want to be an exclusive member of our CWK family, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/support. It's a great way to help support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. In addition to being a part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, feel free to email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR. There are also a lot more ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and check us out on Pinterest. You can find me twice a month on the podcast Looking at Lucasfilm, part of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, and you can find my writing on CWK's website, as well as StarWars.com and on IGN. And if you are considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and help you make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzymedia.com and we can get the process started. I am also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. I want to inspire you to be inspired. Don't be afraid to take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our CWK sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet that you want to go on vacation. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps spread the word. All right, well, hey, Tom, thanks so much. If people want to continue the conversation with you, where can they reach out to you?
Oh, man, on Twitter at Draftline, DRAFTLINE. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode, or send me an email, tomg@coffeewithkenobi.com.
Absolutely, and if people want to continue the conversation about this episode, look no further than CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group. Yeah. We have lots of great conversations. As soon as the episode airs, Lisa posts the thread at the top where we can talk about it in a spoiler-free, excited way. And, of course, you can talk with us on Twitter and all the places I just mentioned as well. So thanks again, everybody, so much for joining us this week on Coffee with Kenobi. Until next time, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.